As the Israelites fought to take the land promised to them by God, the people who still lived there shook in fear, knowing they would soon be destroyed. One of the mighty cities in this new land was so afraid they tricked Israel into making a deal for peace. They would do anything to stay alive. It wasn't long before the king of Jerusalem heard about this tricky deal, and he wasn't happy. He wanted to destroy Gibeon and weaken Israel. So he joined forces with 4 other kings, and they gathered with all of their troops to attack Gibeon. When the Gibeonites found out about what the 5 Amorite kings were planning against them, they sent word to Joshua, "Do not leave your servants to fight alone. Come quickly and save us from the Amorite kings who have joined forces against us. Please help us." So Joshua marched up with his entire army, including all of his best fighting men. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them. I've already given them into your hands so that not one of them will be able to stand against you." After an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua and his troops quickly caught up with the Amorite kings and surprised them in an attack. Just as God promised, he was with the Israelites. As their enemies ran for their lives, Israel chased them with weapons, and God dropped huge hailstones on them. In fact, more of them died from hailstones than from the swords of the Israelites. Them with weapons, and God dropped huge hailstones on them. In fact, more of them died from hailstones than from the swords of the Israelites. Them with weapons, and God dropped huge hailstones on them. In fact, more of them died from hailstones than from the swords of the Israelites. Joshua and his men did not want to quit fighting until the Amorites were completely defeated, but they were running out of time. So Joshua went to the Lord before all of Israel and asked for a miracle. "Please," he pleaded with the Lord, "make the sun and the moon to stand still over Gibeon." And the Lord answered the prayer of Joshua. The Lord answered the prayer of Joshua, "Stand still over Gibeon," to stand still over Gibeon. And the Lord answered the prayer of Joshua. The sun and the moon to stand still over Gibeon. And the Lord answered the prayer of Joshua. God caused the moon and the sun to stop moving. This was an amazing display of God's power over his creation. Surely, the Lord was with Joshua, and he fought for Israel.
So this is the accountings of the Native Americans in Central America, and the Toltec actually recorded this battle and the sun holding Zenith over Gibeon, as they called it. They said it was holding over Zenith. The day when the sun stood still at the zenith over Mexico City. So it says, Aztec epochs of 4 suns in the 3rd circle. He recognized the 20 Aztec symbols for the days of the month and the hieroglyph for Ocelit, the day when the sun stood at the zenith over Mexico City over Gibeon.
It's heavy. What is it?
The Egyptians called it copper from heaven. It's a very rare form of iron. The Egyptians called it copper from heaven.
It's heavy. What is it?
The Egyptians called it copper from heaven. It's a very rare form of iron.
This is King David and the priest Samuel. This is a new movie that just came out, a corny ass movie about us
It's heavy.
making white
What is
people us.
The Egyptians called it copper from heaven. It's a very rare form of iron.
So it's a very rare form of iron. It's called copper from heaven. Alright? They're trying to show you something. That this was in the land of Israel.
This one will be difficult to move.
Well, we need all of it. I trust you'll manage.
Now, in the Bible it goes, it talks about the falling, what happened at the battle right there, the coalition. So it talks about how there was a great battle, and the Lord had sent down a meteor shower onto the enemy, and most of the enemy had been taken out by the meteors. And this had been recorded in the Bible, and also this has been recorded in history. So you can look all throughout the Bible, and it will say right here, it says how so Joshua and his whole army, including the best troops, started out from Gilgal. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them. I've already given you the victory. None of them will be able to stand against you." All night Joshua and his army marched from Gilgal to Gibeon, and they made a surprise attack on the Amorites. The Lord made the Amorites panic at the sight of the Israel's army. Israel slaughtered them at Gibeon and pursued them down the mountain pass at Beth Horon, keeping up the attack as far south as Ezekah and Makkedah. While the Amorites were running down the pass from the Israelite army, the Lord made large hailstones fall down on them all the way to Ezekah. So it wasn't just boom, 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 boom in a little area. All the way to this other town, Ezekah, was just non-stop hailstones, and they took all their soldiers. More of them were killed by the hailstones than by the Israelites. On the day that the Lord gave the men of Israel victories over the Amorites, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the presence of the Israelites. He said, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon. Moon, stop over Ajalon Valley." And as this book I showed you shows you that the Native Americans had witnessed and logged down this day in their calendars. And we all know their calendar is more accurate than the calendar we use today. So if you go down, this thing in history was actually recorded as Campo del Cielo. So Campo del Cielo means field of heaven. So this area is a blast site. Refers to a group of iron meteorites, or to the area where they were found. See that iron meteorites.
But copper from heaven. But copper from heaven. The Egyptians called.
It's heavy. What is it?
The Egyptians called it copper from heaven. It's a very rare form of iron.
It's heavy. What is it?
The Egyptians called it copper from heaven. It's a very rare form of iron.
The Egyptians called it copper from heaven, a rare iron. Argentinian Campo de Cielo, iron meteorite. This refers to a group of iron meteorites or to an area where they were found. This area is situated on the border. This area is situated on the border between the provinces of Chaco and Santiago del Estero, northwest of Buenos Aires, Argentina. The crater field covers an area of 3 times 18.5 kilometers and contains at least 26 craters, the largest being 115 times 91 meters. The crater's age is estimated as 4,000 to 5,000 years. All right, let's just forget about the dating right now. So this is another story, meteorites of Campo de Cielo, impact on the Indian culture. So you got to understand, this left a big impact. They worshipped this site. I mean, the meteorite was known from old by the Indians of the area. They made pilgrimages. Every year to this place, covering a region of 200 kilometers. There, it took place an indefinite solar cult associated to Mesa de Ferro. So a solar cult was created from this one act. They believe this iron mass detached from the sun. See, this is probably interjected because they say that they never believe that, because if that happened, then they would be dead. So they're saying it's not from the sun, but they understand that it came from heaven. And that it was during a battle, and this battle was the battle recorded in the Bible. So you go over here, the Indian culture. So this is a book about it, and it goes very depth into it. So I mean, so it goes, the work is the Gran Chaco is located in the center of South America. It partially, so you got to remember, in the Bible it says after they went over the Jordan River and they went south. So when we went south, we went to South America eventually, and we went to war with them, right? And this is when the battle happened. And this is where this is, in South America. And it says, it is a sedimentary plain covered with parks and subtropical savannas. The soil, free of stones, is composed of layers of sand and mud. Inside the Gran Chaco, to the south of Argentina, provinces of Chaco and Santiago de Estero, is the meteoric dispersion of Campo de Cielo. This was originated by the impact of big metallic meteoroid, probably about 5,800 years ago. Alright, so we gotta understand, this is the battle. And you gotta understand that the carbon dating is wrong. So this thing, all these things line up with the Bible.
I am sure not that I'm world's expert on carbon dating, but I think I can explain things. I'm a teacher. I can explain it as best I can. That's what a teacher's supposed to do. Take the complex and explain it where the average person can get it. And say, since I operate about 4th grade level, you know, I got to understand it myself first, so I can explain it. Let me explain how carbon dating is supposed to work, and then tell you the serious problems with it. Carbon dating was not invented until 1949, in the last 60 years. So when they started telling the kids the Earth is billions of years old, back in 1830, they didn't tell them because of carbon dating. They never thought of carbon dating, never been heard of, okay? Why were they teaching the Earth is billions of years old 160 years ago? Well, because they needed billions of years to make their theory look good. That's why. I mean, if I told you a frog could turn into a prince if you kiss it, you'd all say, well, it's a fairy tale. But if I told you, hey kids, the frog can turn to the prince if you wait billions of years. Oh, wow, maybe so. Now it becomes believable. No, it's still a fairy tale. It's a stupid idea. But the geologic column is where it all started. We covered that on video 4 and some more on video 6 about the geologic column. The Earth was divided up into layers: Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archeozoic. Each layer was assigned a name, an age, and an index fossil. We covered that on video 4. Then they said, now we have to prove these layers are old. So they picked the numbers out of the clear blue sky, and any dating technique that comes along, like carbon dating or any other, has to match the geologic column or it's rejected. Only because the geologic column's been taught for 180 years now. So surely it's true. No, just because it's been taught 180 years doesn't make it true. But that's the logic those scientists will have. Well, we know the geologic column is established, therefore any carbon dates we get should match that. If they don't, we'll throw them out, and we'll keep testing till we do. They might have to test a sample 5 or 6 times till they get the number they want. Well, how do you know any of them are right then? If you're getting a different number every time, how would you know any of them are right? Radiometric dating would not have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. Ever since William Smith at the beginning of the 19th century, fossils have been and still are the best and most accurate method of dating and correlating the rocks in which they occur. Apart from very modern examples, which really are archaeology, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay used to date fossils. They don't date fossils by carbon dating, they date them by their geologic position. That's how it's done. But here's what happens. Earth's atmosphere is about 100 miles thick. Space shuttle, in order to get free from friction, has to get up about 100 miles to be able to outside the air. And, you know, straight up, 100 miles is not that far from here to halfway to Tallahassee, you know. But if you go up, look at the atmosphere, it has very distinct layers to it, which is kind of interesting. It has a heat sink where it gets very, very cold up about 7 or 8 miles up, like 80 or 90 or 100 below zero. But the Earth's atmosphere contains mostly nitrogen, 78% nitrogen, 20%, 21% oxygen, a little bit of CO2 for plants to breathe. Well, these don't breathe it, they're fake, but plants breathe in carbon dioxide. And there's a very tiny little bit of radioactive carbon-14, 0.0000765%. This radioactive carbon-14 is different than regular carbon. It's produced by radiation striking the sun, striking the atmosphere. Sunlight strikes the atmosphere, slaps the nitrogen around, and turns it into carbon-14. So it all starts by the sunlight hitting the atmosphere. Just to give you the procedure here, about 21 pounds of carbon-14 is produced every year, and that is spread out all over the world. If I told you there's 21 pounds of gold, but it's spread out equally all over the world, forget it. I'm not even going to go look for it. Okay, you're not going to find it. Real tiny amounts. If you look at a periodic table, carbon and nitrogen are right next to each other. Nitrogen has an atomic weight of 14. Carbon has an atomic weight of 12. But if the sunlight slaps the nitrogen around, it'll knock a few things off of it, and it becomes carbon-14. So it still weighs as much as the nitrogen, but now it's considered a carbon. It's called radioactive, which does not mean it listens to the radio. It's just, it's unstable, and it's going to break apart. It's like 3 guys dating the same girl. That relationship's not going to last, okay, forever. Something will go wrong, right? Find the one you want, Jonathan, and just marry her and be happy the rest of your life, right? Carbon-14 is unstable. It does not like being carbon-14. It wants to get out of this situation, so it breaks down. About half of it will break down on a statistical average. About half of it is going to fall apart every 5,700 years. Now, it is doing this on a purely random procedure. I mean, you got a pile of molecules. You never know which one's going to fall apart. But statistics tell us about half of them will fall apart every 5,700 years, roughly. Now, while it is carbon-14, it's floating around in the atmosphere, like the rest of the carbon, and it latches onto oxygen, like carbon often does, and becomes carbon dioxide. And they hook up, and they're happily floating around the atmosphere. And the plants are breathing in CO2. Animals come along and eat the plants. So the only way carbon-14 gets into the living world is from the atmosphere. It's produced by the sun, striking the atmosphere. Plants breathe it in, animals eat the plants. Probably during your lifetime, you've either eaten plants or you've eaten animals that have eaten plants. How many have ever done that before? Like today for lunch, right? Okay. Everything we do is from one of those 2 sources. It's plants or it's animals that ate plants. Well, the plants are absorbing CO2. Some of it is radioactive. So if the atmosphere contains 0.0000765%, it is assumed that the plants also have 0.0000765%. Probably a reasonable assumption, and I don't argue.
So pretty much, basically, carbon dating is wrong, and they cannot carbon date past 3,000 years. So here you go. This guy said, and this one it goes, the indigenous people of Grand Chaco understand the meteorites as a piece of the sun, given to Strongfield the name Field of the Sky. So the other one was Field of the Heavens. This is Field of the Sky. So it's a table of iron, copper, iron. And this is what it looks like. This is where they found it in America, in the Americas.
So Joshua marched up with his entire army and fought with the Amorite kings and surprised them in an attack, just as God promised. He was with the Israelites. As their enemies ran for their lives, Israel chased them with weapons, and God dropped huge hailstones on them. In fact, more of them died from hailstones than from the swords of the Israelites. Joshua and his men did not want to quit fighting until the Amorites were completely defeated, but they were running out of time. So Joshua went to the Lord before all of Israel and asked for a miracle. Please, he pleaded with the Lord, make the sun and the moon to stand still over Gibeon. And the Lord answered the prayer of Joshua. God caused the moon and the sun to stop moving. This was an amazing display of God's power, and did not want to quit fighting hailstones, then from the sword, and died from hailstones, then from the swords of the Israelites was on them. In fact, more of them died from hailstones than from the swords of the Israelites. Joshua and his men did not want to quit fighting until the Amorites were completely defeated, but they were running out of time. So Joshua went to the Lord before all of Israel and asked for a miracle. Please, he pleaded with the Lord, make the sun and the moon to stand still over Gibeon. And the Lord answered the prayer of Joshua. God caused the moon and the sun to stop moving. This was an amazing display of God's power over his creation. Surely, the Lord was on them. In fact, more of them died from hailstones than from the swords of the Israelites.